Yeah, man, you will never find anyone in the history of humanity that will truthfully tell you that Freeze got into it with him over abroad, or they seen Freeze get into it over abroad, or that they themselves were the broad that Freeze got into it over. Never, ever, 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 man. So we gonna talk about why. But first, wipe your feet off at the door when you step into a pimp's domain. Let's go.
Bitch, you want all this pimping you can't afford. Perform like a punk, but want a winner's reward. Some suckers give you points, but bitch, you never scored. If you ain't paying pimping, then bitch, you getting ignored.
Okay.
I'm so sick of these.
You know, the things that you witness in your formative years as a young boy from older men that have an influence on you will play a major role in the man that you become when you grow up, right? And myself, the men that influenced me when I grew up, of course, the main and strongest influence being my father. I never seen my father get into it over a chick. Never seen any of my 9, 10 uncles get into it over a chick. Never seen any of my older cousins, my brothers. I just never witnessed that. That's not something that I learned, right? So I never, and I've seen people have, conflicts or whatever about a female, but I've never seen the guys that, like I said, were the strongest influences on me get into it and be tripping over a female. I've never seen that growing up, right? So naturally, when I became of age and I became a man, that was already instilled in me based on what I saw and learned from growing up, and then, it's just really a California thing. At least it was a California thing, because these newer cats, they stay getting into it and tripping over females. We'll talk about that in a minute. But my generation on back, hey man, we never got into it over females generally. Now you've always had your cats that, be, head over heels, catch a grenade, jump in front of a train for a chick. You've always had them types of dudes, but it wasn't a majority type thing like I believe it is now. So, one thing that kind of instilled that in me, I remember as a teenager, my dad telling me a story about his younger sister, which is my auntie. She called him crying one day, and she was talking about how her boyfriend did this and did that to her physically, right? So my dad, being the big brother that he is, he grab his accessories and he jump in the ride and he fly over there, right? So he go confront dude with the accessories on him, and he like, man, what's up? You putting your hands on my sister? And dude was like, hey man, listen, your sister, she took my car against my wishes, and she, damaged my car. Right. So, that's, and then he explained the whole story. Of course I wasn't there and I don't know, but he explained it, I imagine, in further detail to my pops what happened. Right. So when my pops heard the boyfriend side of the story, he stepped back. He was like, well, shit, that's between y'all. I'm gonna let y'all handle that. And I know his sister, my auntie, was probably looking at him crazy, but my pops explained this story to me, and that just further reaffirmed it to me that, chicks ain't worth it. It's not that women are not worth, anything. It's just that getting into it over a chick is senseless, right? And then, I just had real player type experiences, man. I'll never forget, man. I'll never forget when I was real young. I was still a teenager, and this girl that I was, seeing at the time, dealing with at the time, me and her pops got real cool, right? And I remember her father telling me, the guy that was, dealing with his daughter at the time, he came to me one day, because I used to go help him work sometimes, right? And one day I was helping him work, and he told me, because he he wasn't in a relationship with her mom no more, but the lady that he was in a relationship with at the time, you know, he had just got into it with her. So he, you know, he was kind of still flared up about it, right? So he told me, he was like, hey, listen, man, always keep you a spare tire. And he was like, you know what I mean by spare tire, right? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, man, you know, just in case one, you know, get to acting up on you, just switch it out, brand new tire. You know, and I just like how Pops kept it player with me, knowing that I'm dealing with his daughter, basically telling me like, yeah, I know you know, with my daughter and everything, man, but just make sure you keep your spare tire, man, just in case my daughter get to tripping, you know, switch her out, you know, and you rolling with the next one, you dig? So these are the type of things that influenced me when I was real young, man. And many more things, right? And many more gentlemen that influenced me to just be a grown ass man about things, for one, and then two, to just keep it player in all situations, man. This is why I was perfectly groomed for the game, even though I didn't grow up around no pimping per se. You know, I didn't have that type of influence around me, but I just grew up around people that had player type ways and, you know, player type ideologies when it came to dealing with women, right? So this is what shaped and molded me, and this is the type of guy that I was coming into the game, right? I came into the game as somebody who wasn't tripping on females, right? I came into the game as somebody who had different situations that could have potentially led to that, but me being the player that I was, I just kept it player in them type of situations, even young. You know, I had situations when I was like 18, right, where a chick dealing with this dude and he find out what's going on with me and her, and he confront me about it on some aggressive shit, and I just, you know, keep it player, right? And I just keep it smooth, right? Now it's a fine line that you got to walk sometimes with them type of dudes, because you got to let it be known that you're not tripping over the woman, but at the same time, you're not no bitch. You're not scared of this man, but it's just not that serious to get into it and for us to be tussling, you know, over this woman, right? So, and then furthermore, right, this is how you got to look at it. Two grown ass men getting into it over a chick who 9 times out of 10, she's in the wrong. Most of the time when two men have a conflict over a woman, the woman is usually the one in the wrong, right? In the square world, it's usually like a situation where the woman is dealing with both men behind each of them's back, right? Or, you know, it might be a situation where a guy try to holler at the chick and he don't know that she got a man, and, you know, he don't mean no disrespect. You know, you got some dudes that'll trip about that. But however it goes, even in the square world, right, it just looks less than manly for two men to, as Sinful to P would say, emotionally react when they have a conflict over a woman, right? It just looks less than manly in front of her, right? And then two, you have some women that they get a kick out of that. It strokes their ego to know that they have the power to make two men fight over her. And I'm never gonna be one of those two men that's about to fight over you. It just ain't gonna happen. You're never gonna have that type of power or control over me to be able to dictate my emotions to the point where I get overwhelmed and now I'm tussling with this other man over you, right? And see, what you don't understand is, because there's a lot of guys who are in the grave right now, and there's a lot of guys who are in the penitentiary right now because they got into it with another man over a woman. And guess what happens when one ends up in the grave and the other one ends up in the penitentiary? Guess what she gonna do? She gonna be on somebody else's pipe, right? She not gonna follow you into the grave. and she not gonna follow the other man into the penitentiary, or you into the penitentiary and the other man into the grave. She not gonna do that. So naturally, you know, as she should, I can't be mad at her for, you know, hopping on somebody else's pipe. That's just in the nature of a woman. That's what she gonna do. So and these are like some of the consequences that can be the case when you have two men getting into it over a female. It's never that serious, right? It's never that serious, because just like she gonna hop on another pipe when you out of the picture, it's just that much easier for you to, you know, go get you another woman, right? If it's an issue that has to do with her lack of respect for you, right, and what you have going on with her, hey man, is way too many women in the world to take it to that level over one. It's never that serious, right? And then when it comes to the game, right, when it comes to the pimping, man, hey, it's a lot of you dudes out there, man, that consider yourselves to be some pimping, that stay getting into it over women. And, you know, even in the game, you have some P's that have been unalived over a woman, and you have some P's that have ended up in a penitentiary over doing something to another man over a woman. And you gotta feel silly. You know what I mean? If you watching this shit from the penitentiary right now, man, and you're there because of something that you did over a woman, hey man, you know, you have to feel silly, and hopefully you have learned and grown from that, right? Because sometimes that's unfortunately what happens. You know, a cat end up going to the joint over something that he did over a female, and he got time to sit down and analyze his decisions and understand how foolish and silly and immature and unmanly they were, and grow from that, right? So, but yeah, in the game, man, you got a lot of cats that get into it constantly over chicks, right? But see, this is what you got to understand about the game, right? When you some pimping, man, this is what you got to understand. Hey, listen, man, the chick don't belong to you, man. She's not your property. And as I've said before, she's not your dope sack pimping. She's not your hood store pimping. She's not your hood park pimping. She's not your neighborhood that you bang pimping. Hey man, them 304s belong to the game. They don't belong to you. They not your possession. They not your property if you pimping. So with that being understood, man, you understand that there's no reason to get into it over something that belongs to the game, right? That you just having a turn with. That's all it is, man. We have turns with 304s as the pimping. And, you know, some turns last longer than others, right? The turn depends on how long she wants you to have a turn with her. But some turns last, you know, for a season, and some turns don't last that long at all. You dig? But it's never that serious. And especially in the game, most of the time when dudes get into it over a chick, it's because she did something wrong, or it's because the dude that she's with, he did something wrong or didn't do something that he was supposed to do, right? A lot of times you have a chick out of pocket, right? Now, some chicks, you know, you can explain to them and break it down to them what it means to stay in pocket and be out of pocket. But some chicks is just in their nature. Some chicks are what I call ninja thirsty. You got some chicks that are just ninja thirsty, and they just love attention from ninjas, and they gonna take every bit of attention from ninjas that they can. So whenever ninjas is showing them attention, they gonna be out of pocket. You got some chicks like that, right? And so for a guy to get into it with a chick that's like that, that's just chronically out of pocket, hey man, you look a fool. And you know, to those types of chicks that are ninja thirsty, if you get into it with a chick like that, 9 times out of 10, that's gonna stroke her ego in a way that it shouldn't. It's gonna make her feel empowered over 2 pimps. It's going to make her feel bigger than two pimps, which might even make her feel bigger than the game, which is crazy, right? For you to be responsible for her feeling that way is crazy. You know, the pimping would never. Real actual pimping is not just checking money from abroad or, you know, giving instructions to abroad, but some real pimping would never. You dig? Never. It's never that serious, right? But then you have situations where the chick is out of pocket because she hasn't been taught better, right? Or, you know, the supposed to be folks, he might have, you know, explained it to her, but he don't care if she get out of pocket. He don't really care what she do. And then you got some cats that they'll let it go as far as they don't even care if the chick get disrespectful with the pimping, right? She's your chick. She's under your instructions. She's following your lead, and she's out there under your watch, disrespecting P's, being out of pocket with P's, and you don't care, right? But let pimping, you know, chastise her or even say the wrong thing or, you know, do the wrong thing that you may not agree with, basically allowing her to reap what she has sown. If she's sowing seeds of disrespect, then she's reaping the consequences of disrespect, right? And sometimes pimping might want to be responsible for, you know, her reaping what she sows. And you have these guys that, again, they don't care about what they chick does, but let pimping want her to be responsible and reap what she sows. Now you want to get into it with pimping. You want to get violent with pimping. You want to threaten, fight, unalive, all this stuff, right? Over a chick who, again, she's not going to follow you into the penitentiary. She's not going to follow you into the grave. And, you know, if you end up in either one of them places, she going to forget about you next week and she going to be on somebody else's pipe, right? It's never that serious. And a lot of you dudes, you be so happy to have a chick and you be so head over heels for a chick that, you know, you willing to crash out. And that's one thing pimping will never be, is a crash out. Pimping don't even know how to be a crash out. If you give a pimp an instruction manual how to be a crash out, pimping ain't gonna even be able to read that shit. Pimping gonna look at that shit like it's Mandarin Chinese, man, writing. You dig? We ain't gonna be able to read that shit, how to be a crash out. Pimping don't know how to do that. But a lot of you dudes are well versed in being crash outs. A lot of you dudes, it's in your nature to be crash outs. And a lot of the reason for that is you didn't have what I explained in the beginning that I had growing up, which is, you know, player type influences. Your strongest influence was your mama, your aunties, your big sisters, and your grandma, right? So you acting like them whenever you get into a conflict. But those of us that had them player type influences growing up and manly influences growing up, we respond in a player type way whenever we met with conflict, right? So yeah, man, it's never that serious, you know. And then it just makes you look less than what you're supposed to be in front of the woman, right? Even if it doesn't stroke her ego to see two guys getting into it over her, especially two pimps, you know, getting into it over her. Even if it doesn't stroke her ego, it still makes you look less than what you're supposed to be in front of her, especially if it's something that she did wrong, you know, or if it's just you emotionally reacting and overreacting at that. It, you know, it just don't look manly. It look feminine, you know, that responding the way a woman would to a conflict. You know, grown ass men, you know, it's a way to go about it, like I said, without looking like a buster, and at the same time, you know, affirming your manhood, letting it be known that you're not afraid, but you just too player to get into it and too much of a man to get into it over this woman, right? But the bottom line, man, hey, We don't do that. You know, especially where I'm from, man, California, Long Beach, California, man, we don't get into it over the bitch, man. You dig? But let that marinate on your mind one time, freezes it. Go ahead, put some of this good old love in your body like so. And of course, as always, long live the incomparable Sinful to P. We out. Dig this.
Yeah.
I've been stroking relentless to get waves like this. I spoke into existence for her to pay like this. In the trenches on a day like this, traffic consistent, and so I have to insist that she relay my chips. It's a trap with her name on it and my game on it. Any forces coming against this game, shame on it. Standing on my pimpin' from day one and remain on it. It carried me through every terrain and I gained on it. Experience joy and pain on it, sustained on it.
But getting back to this game that I never left.
Baby, I wouldn't been.